Hey there, I'm Emily Duplessis from Rental Rookie, and today I'm going to answer the question, where do I get financing? And I'm really going to go over 4 different places that you could turn to find financing. Now, you're not limited to these 4, but these are 4 that you're going to want to consider if you're just getting started and you're thinking, okay, I want to buy a property, but I don't know where to get the money for it. The first one is to check out traditional big banks, right? So these are the Bank of Americas, the Wells Fargo, right? These are kind of the nationwide big, large banks. They have, a lot of options for you when it comes to loan products. And so that's definitely one of the places that you'll want to start if you're looking to go a financing route, whether that's going to be a property you're going to house hack and live in and rent out, or a property you're going to buy straight up as an investment property. You're definitely going to want to check out an option of those traditional banks. If you run into issues there, the second place that I would go are local banks, right? If you live, especially maybe in more of a small community, more rural community, you might have smaller local banks, credit unions, where you might already have a relationship with those banks, because I know that in our small town where we live, there's only a handful of banks. There aren't really that many big banks. We're really kind of limited to a lot of just local banks. And so a lot of people have relationships that they've built up for years and years and years with those banks, and relationships can go a long way with smaller banks and local banks and credit unions, because a lot of decisions that are made in the smaller local banks are made there. They're not having to be sent to corporate or things like that. They're made right there in the bank. And so if you have a relationship, that can give you a leg up and really give you some negotiating power when you go in and you talk to somebody about wanting to get started with investing in rental property. Another place that you can look is looking for, hard money and private investors. So there are hard money lenders out there that will lend you a lump sum of cash for you to be able to go buy a property. You're typically going to have to pay that back a lot faster than you would have to pay back like a traditional 30-year term bank loan. Hard money loans also may require higher interest rate, like a higher rate, some higher fees and points. So I wouldn't say that that's the most advantageous avenue to start with, but if you have exhausted all of your other options, it's definitely one that you might want to consider. And the fourth one that I'm going to mention are, I like to call them investor-friendly lending companies. So they are lending companies that exist that only lend to real estate investors. So they don't lend to people who are buying a property to live in, an owner-occupied, a family going to buy a house. They don't lend to that. They have products that are specifically made for buy and hold investors, flippers, and these are companies, a couple off the top of my head, like Lima One Capital, B2R Financing. And what happens is those companies are looking at the purchase of this property more as a business and more as an investment. And so typically with some of these companies, you're not having to deal with DTI ratios, your debt to income ratios. There might be a little bit more flexibility with credit score. They are going to look and analyze the property looking at what it will make. When you're just getting started with a traditional bigger bank, they don't necessarily care what it's going to make in terms of the business side of it. They just want to see what it's going to cost you. Some of these investor-friendly lending companies will actually lend to you based off of the potential of what the property will make. So it's definitely a great option. The only downfall with it is sometimes you're going to pay a little bit higher interest rate, but the reality is if the numbers still work, even at a little bit of a higher interest rate, and this is what option you have to get the deal done, why wouldn't you go for it, right? If you really want to get started that way. So again, definitely one to check out. Again, the 4 were traditional big banks, local banks and credit unions, hard money loans or private investors, and the investor-friendly lender companies. If you're looking to learn more about those investor-friendly lending companies, we actually have interviews inside our pro community with lenders, with originators from those companies who can give you, and we interview them, we ask them the tough questions about, what do you really need to know about investing with them and getting a loan through them. So definitely something that you'll want to check out in our pro community.